Casa Vicens. Casa Vicens is a modernist building located in Barcelona, in the district of Gràcia. The work of Antoni Gaudí. It was the architect's first major project. It was built between 1883 and 1885, although Gaudí drew up the original project between 1878 and 1880. The work is framed in an orientalist style, close to Neo-Mudéjar, although interpreted in a personal way, with the stamp of originality that Gaudí brought to his projects. In this work, he sketched for the first time some of his constructive resources that would be common in the emergence of modernism. At the time, it was a much commented work, which caused a great sensation among the public of the time. At the time the building was built, Gracia was still an independent urban center of Barcelona and had its own town hall, with the category of town, although it is currently a district of the city. The original project had a large garden space, in addition to the house, but over time the land was parceled out and sold for the construction of residential buildings. At present, the complex is reduced to just a house and a small surrounding space. To make the most of the space, Gaudí carried out a project of 3 facades, with the house attached by a party wall to an adjoining convent. In 1925 an extension of the house was projected, a commission that was offered to Gaudí, who refused. Instead, he proposed one of his disciples, Joan Baptista Serra, who made a new bay following Gaudí's original style, with the inclusion of a new facade, leaving a building with 4 winds. This work belongs to Gaudí's Orientalist period, 1883 to 1888, a period in which the architect made a series of works of marked Oriental taste, inspired by the art of the Near and Far East, India, Persia, Japan, as well as by Hispanic Islamic art, mainly Mudéjar and Nasrid. Gaudí used ceramic tile decoration with great profusion at this time, as well as mitral arches, exposed brick cartouches, and finials in the form of a temple or dome. The building was declared a historic artistic monument in 1969 with registration number 52, MHEN, an asset of cultural interest in 1993 with reference RI 51-0003823, and a World Heritage Site in 2005 with reference 320 bis. History. Gaudí's first important work. Antoni Gaudí. Antoni Gaudí, Reyes or Riotums, 1852 Barcelona, 1926, studied architecture at the School of La Lonja and at the School of Architecture of Barcelona, where he graduated in 1878. To pay for his degree, Gaudí worked as a draftsman for various architects and builders, such as Leandre Serralac, Joan Martorell, Emilio Sala Cortés, Francisco de Paula del Villar, Y. Lozano, and Josep Fontser. Once he obtained the title of architect in 1878, his first works were lampposts for the Plaza Real, the project of Quioscos Jurasai, the showcase for the Esteban Comella glove shop, and the furniture for the chapel pantheon of the Palace of Soberlano in Cumulus, all from the same year of his graduation, as well as the Cooperativa Obra Maternense, 1878 to 1882, which was his first important commission, although it did not materialize as a whole, since only one ship was built. His next works were the furniture for the Gibbert Pharmacy, 1879, and the works for the Congregation of Jesus Mary in Barcelona and Tarragona, 1879 to 1881. Gaudí combined the construction of Casa Vicens with other commissions. In 1883, he took charge of the works of the expiatory temple of the Sagrada Familia, begun the previous year with a project by Francisco de Paula del Villar y Lozano, who resigned shortly afterwards due to disagreements with the construction board. Gaudí would spend the rest of his life in the construction of the temple, which would be his magnum opus and the synthesis of all his architectural findings. In the same year, 1883, he designed an altarpiece for the chapel of the Blessed Sacrament in the parish church of San Felix de Alela, as well as some topographical plans of the Quinrosel de la Lina estate in Gelida, and was commissioned to design a villa annexed to the Palace of Soberlano, owned by the Marquis of Cumulus, in the Cantabrian town of the same name, known as El Capricho, built between 1883 and 1885 in an Orientalist style similar to that of Casa Vicens, where its ceramic cladding also stands out. In a similar style, he built the Güell Pavilions in Pedralbes, 1884 to 1887, a commission from Eusebi Güell, his main patron and friend. Gaudí was at that time in the first period of his career, which is characterized by the use of an architectural language of great constructive simplicity, in which the straight line prevails over the curved line. Stylistically, it corresponds to a period of orientalist influence, where the structural and ornamental forms correspond to the taste for Oriental art, mainly Mudéjar, Persian, and Byzantine, as can be seen in other works of his, such as the Güell Pavilions, the Güell Cellars, or El Capricho de Cumulus. Gaudí had studied Neo-Mudéjar art in the works of Owen Jones, such as plans, elevations, sections, and details of the Alhambra, 1842, designs for mosaics and tessellated pavements, 1842, and grammar of ornament, 1856. Gaudí's concept of the family home, and which he reflected in Casa Vicens, is reflected in an unpublished article he wrote in 1881, entitled La Casa Manor, in Catalan. La Casa Perol, the house, is the small nation of the family. The family, like the nation, has history, foreign relations, changes of government, and so on. The independent family has its own house. The non-independent family has a rented house. The house of one's own is the country of birth. The rented house is the country of immigration. That is why one's own home is everyone's ideal. You can't conceive of your own home without a family. That's only how you can conceive of renting it. In 1878, Gaudí was commissioned by Manuel Vicens a Montaner to build a second summer residence for the family in the town of Gracia. 8 Manuel Vicens, 1836 to 1895, was an exchange and stockbroker, although there is little information about him. From his will, it is known that he had a house in Alella, as well as 2 properties in the center of Barcelona and some land in the Valvedrera area. The land where the house was built had been inherited by Manuel Vicens from his mother, Rosa Montaner I Mattis, in 1877. He died on April 29, 1895, leaving his property to his widow, Dolores Giralt I Griffel. It is not known how Vicens met Gaudí, although it is likely that they coincided in the cultural circles linked to the Renaixenca that they both frequented. Subsequently, Vicens and Gaudí maintained a friendly relationship and, on numerous occasions, the architect spent his summers in Vicens' house in Alella, between 1880 and 1890. For this house, Gaudí designed 2 pieces of furniture, a wood and metal corner fireplace with the initials MV for Manuel Vicens, currently preserved in Casa Vicens, and a cedar wood corner cabinet with gilded brass and the initials DG for Dolores Giralt, bought by Casa Vicens at auction in 2023 in order to be exhibited after restoration. The result of these stays was an altarpiece project that Gaudí carried out in 1883 for the Church of San Felix in Alella, commissioned by the priest Jean Puig Claret, which was finally not carried out. A drawing in Indian ink on cloth paper, on a scale of 1/25, is preserved. The town of Gracia was at that time an independent entity from Barcelona. Its population center was formed around the Carmelite convent of Santa Maria de Gracia, popularly known as Els Josepets, founded in 1630. It was an agricultural area, populated by farmhouses, which at the beginning of the 19th century began to urbanize and forge an incipient industrial fabric. The town was added to Barcelona in 1897 along with 5 other neighboring towns: Sants, Les Corts, San Gervasio de Caselas, San Andrés de Palomar, and San Martín de Provençals. At that time, many families of the bourgeoisie located their second residence in Gracia, since the villa combined its proximity to the city with the tranquility of a village. 8 The house is located on Calle de las Carolinas, named in honor of the Caroline Islands, a former Spanish colony, in 1908. Its previous name was San Gervasio. The original site was located between the convent of the Daughters of Charity of San Vicente de Paul, with whose party wall one side of the building was attached, northeast side, and a cul-de-sac called Rinson de San Gervasio, which later disappeared. This land came from 3 plots acquired between 1846 and 1854 by Agustí Maria Baró y Tastas, which included several ground-floor buildings. In 1866 it passed by inheritance to Manuel Vicens' mother, Rosa Montaner I Mattis, widow of Onofre Vicens I Domènech. When she died in 1877, she passed by inheritance to Manuel Vicens. It is unknown whether the buildings that were on the site were demolished or partly used in Gaudí's project. In 1876 and 1881, Vicens bought 2 plots of land adjacent to Calle Rinson de San Gervasio, which allowed the garden of the estate to be expanded. Gaudí completed the project for the house and garden complex in 1880, although the plans were signed in 1883, when they were presented to the Gracia City Council. In its design, it combined a relatively simple architectural structure with the complexity of a careful decoration, especially in terms of the use of ceramic tiles. Stylistically, it corresponds fully to his orientalist period, but the profusion of the decorative arts, ceramics, wrought iron, glass, cabinet making, anticipates what would be his period of splendor within Catalan modernism. The works were carried out between 1883 and 1885. Gaudí personally directed the works, according to a testimony by Joan Baptista Serra to George Collins in 1959. The architect sat under a parasol and supervised the construction, sometimes demolishing what he considered to be poorly executed. In its realization, Gaudí had the help of several artisans who would be regulars in his works, such as the sculptor Laurent Matamala, the cabinet maker Eudald Punti, or the blacksmith Joan Onos, as well as the contractor Claudia Alsina. The decoration was carried out by the painter Francesc Torres Casana and the sculptor Antoni Riba. The original plot had dimensions of 30 by 34.5 m, with a surface area of 1,035 square meters. The house had 3 facades, since on its northeast side it faced a party wall of a neighboring convent, although the entrance was on the southeast side, which faced Calle de San Gervasio. The main facade was the one facing the garden, on the southwest side, which bordered the alley of Rinson de San Gervasio, 35 m long by 3.5 m wide. The house, conceived as a single-family house, had a basement for a cellar warehouse, a noble floor that had an entrance hall, dining room, tribune, smoking room, fumoir, kitchen and laundry room, a first floor with bedrooms, bathrooms, a dressing room and a library, attics for service accommodation, and a roof terrace with a small walkway between the roofs with chimneys and a small pavilion in the northwest corner. It had a Catalan vaulted staircase, with a wooden wainscot decorated on each step with smallorlios from Torres Casana, which were lost in the reform of 1925. The architect from Reyes planned a set of masonry walls alternating with rows of tiles, which reproduced yellow flowers typical of the area, Indian carnations or Tagetes erecta, which Gaudí had found on the site of the house before construction and wanted to reproduce in the final project. He was also inspired by a palm tree on the site to design the wrought iron gate of the main entrance, in the shape of palm leaves, Camerops humilis. In his words, "When I went to take measurements, the plot was completely covered with those same little yellow flowers that I adopted as an ornamental theme in the ceramics. There was also a luxuriant palm tree, whose palms, cast in iron, formed the fence and the entrance door of the house." In the design of the house, Gaudí sought to combine practicality and aesthetics, as well as comfort, hygiene, and well-being, as well as perfect harmony with the garden and the surrounding environment. As in all his projects, he planned down to the smallest detail and took care of aspects such as lighting and ventilation, trying to establish the most optimal conditions for the habitability of the house. 9. One of the most evocative spaces of the complex was the tribune located next to the dining room, open to the garden by Oriental-inspired wooden lattices that, when left open, left this space outdoors. It contained a water fountain formed by a Renaissance-style basin and an elliptical metal grill, similar to a spider's web, which turned the water into a thin sheet through which, when light passed through it, it decomposed into the colors of the rainbow. Tiles with carnation motifs. Gaudí claimed to have found these flowers on the site to be built and wanted to pay tribute to them. The old garden comprised 3 areas: the one that separated the house from the street, the one in front of the noble area, formed by circular palm beds, and another lateral area that housed fruit trees. The garden of the house was designed by Gaudí with care, since it was a summer residence and was of great importance as a place of recreation. Along with the natural elements, 2 elements stood out: a fountain spouting of brick and ceramic at the entrance, and a monumental waterfall, also made of brick. The waterfall was the same height as the house, and was formed by a large catenary arch that supported a structure of false brick arches that formed 2 loggias of alternating pillars, with 2 side staircases. In the upper part, Two water tanks poured a fine rain into a rockery grotto. In the spandrels of the arch, there were some terracotta bas-reliefs by the sculptor Antoni Gaudí, which represented children swimming. In Gaudí's project, this waterfall was attached to the perimeter wall, but in the 1925 extension, it was left as a freestanding structure. It was demolished in 1946, when a part of the garden was sold for the construction of houses. The garden had another fountain at the main entrance, consisting of two overlapping cups, the lower one larger and cylindrical-shaped, covered with stucco, and, in its upper part, tiles with the motifs of the carnations, and the upper one in the form of an octagonal prism, with faces of 75 by 45 centimeters, covered with ceramic tiles with motifs of flowers and sunflower leaves. It was eliminated in the extension of 1925. The perimeter fence of the house was formed by a rubble stone wall with semi-elliptical battlements and a wrought iron grille decorated with palm leaf motifs and carnations, and topped with trident-shaped spikes, right at the main entrance. In the southwest corner, there was a small pavilion that served as a viewpoint, formed by two brick columns and three stone columns, the central one, geminated, that supported an L-shaped brick structure with blind arches, crowned with ceramic pieces. 38. The original fence measured 30 by 34.50 m, and each frame measured 0.49 by 0.49 by 0.12 centimeters. The design of the grille was delineated by Gaudí in the facade plan that is preserved in the Historical Archive Catalonia, signed by Gaudí and Vicens on January 15, 1883. On this design, the sculptor Laurent Matamala made a plaster mold, which was later cast in iron by the forger Joan Onos. According to Gaudí's drawing, each sheet was to be placed diagonally, but in the end they were placed horizontally, alternating a left alignment with a right one. After the extension of the estate in 1925, the stone wall was replaced by new sections of the palm flake, which then surrounded the entire perimeter. However, after the sale of several areas of the garden for construction, several sections of the fence were dismantled. Some of them were relocated to the access gate to Gell Park and to the Laird House, home of Hughes Bigwell, in the same park, now the Baldiri Rijksaak School, while some portions are preserved in the Gaudí House Museum. On a plot of land annexed to Casa Vicens, number 28, Calle de las Carolinas, there was a mineral water fountain called Santa Rita since ancient times. It was customary among the neighbors that on May 22nd, the day of Santa Rita, they came to drink the waters of the fountain. In 1895, the waters were declared of public utility, and their commercialization began. When in 1925 Joan Baptiste Serra undertook the extension of Casa Vicens, he built a chapel dedicated to Santa Rita on the same site as the fountain. In 1963, the chapel was demolished to build a new residential building. In 1899, Manuel Vicens' widow, Dolores Giralt I. Griffel, sold the house to Dr. Antonio Jover Puig for 45,000 pesetas. Antonio Jover, Barcelona, 1855 to 1930, was a renowned pediatrician, graduated from the University of Barcelona in 1876. Settled in Cuba, he was a professor at the University of Havana until the independence of the island, when returned to Spain. Thanks to the fortune he had forged overseas, like other Indians of the time, he was able to acquire Casa Vicens. He represented various Spanish commercial interests in Cuba and, even after its independence, spent several seasons on the island. He was also president of the Casino Español in Havana and the Circle Catala. Permanently settled in Barcelona in 1924, he was a councillor of the Barcelona City Council from 1924 to 1930 and deputy mayor under Baron de Viver. In 1908, Dr. Jover sold the house to his brother, José Jover, reserving the right of usufruct. He died without descendants in 1913, leaving it to Angela González Sánchez, Antonio Jover's wife. In 1925, Dr. Jover planned an extension of the building with the aim of turning it into a first residence. To do this, it acquired a plot of land adjacent to the party wall with the convent, of 212.88 square meters, corresponding to numbers 18 to 20 of Calle de las Carolinas. He also acquired the land located between the alley of Rinson de San Gervasio and the avenue of the Riera de Cassols, and managed to have the alley declared surplus of public roads. with which he was able to expand the garden in all that extension. At that time, the estate reached its maximum extension of 1,738 square meters. In order to enlarge the house, he turned to Gaudí to take charge of the project, but he refused, since at that time he was dedicating his time entirely to the Sagrada Familia. Instead, he recommended one of his disciples, Joan Baptista Serra, who designed the right half of the facade in the style of Gaudí. Joan Baptista Serra de Martínez, Barcelona, 1888 to 1962, studied at the Barcelona School of Architecture, where he graduated in 1914. That same year, he met Gaudí in the church of Santos Justo y Pastor, where they were united by their love of music. Eclectic in style, it was influenced by both modernism and noucentism, classicism and modern European architecture. One of his first works was the Kikuri House in Barcelona, which was followed by his own house, the Villa Mercedes, on Escoles Pais Street, the house of Eduard Schaefer, on Copernicus Street, and the Valenti Solar House, on Via Laietana, among others. He was municipal architect of Montcada, Wiriaxac, Ripollet,